second question of these two, which was Christian churches are always safe places where you can trust everyone. Again, that is not true. Just my personal experience, and I'm gonna tiptoe around the story a little bit because it involves people that I personally know. It involves some family, and I've not gotten permission to share this publicly. It's a long time ago. Some of the people, I don't care if it comes out that they were involved, but there's other individuals that are affected by this that I do care if they care. So I'm not going to share specifics for that reason. But I was at a church before, and I had a family member who was in a position of authority, was a trusted person, and ended up that he was doing things with a minor that he should not have been doing with a minor. It kind of came out. That person's parents kind of brought it up, said they're going to go talk to the cops. And so my family member went to the cops and basically said, hey, this person is going to come tell you this, but they're just looking for money. And by chance, that person's parents had a reputation of doing stuff like this to try to get money. I have very good reason to believe that that was not actually the case, that stuff actually did happen. Now, along with that, there was also some issues where the senior pastor at the church that I was at told this family member of mine that he needed to step down because just having those allegations is not good. And so he needed to step down until an investigation could be completed and they could determine whether or not anything happened and if action needed to be taken, which I don't think is improper or inappropriate. I think that is 100% within the bounds of reason. And my family member did not like that, said no, they weren't going to do that, ended up pushing for a church vote, basically between this family member of mine and the current senior pastor, to see who was going to take over as the senior pastor going forward. Most of the church was my family, and most of the church voted in favor of this family member of mine. And the night that the vote happened, that was one of the first times I really saw my dad like actually get up and take a stand against like where it was going to be very, very inconvenient for him to do so. I wasn't supposed to watch it, but I snuck out of the like little kids area in the back, and I was standing just outside the sanctuary, and I was listening to the conversation and stuff. But my dad was very vocal about what's going on. There were some names called towards my parents and other individuals that were making a stand, and that was the last time that we went to that church that evening. So that was a situation where the church tried to sweep an issue under the rug. That should not have been swept under the rug. It should have been dealt with. Still to this day, it has never been dealt with. But you would think that the church should be a safe place for what the church is and what the church it's supposed to stand for. Now, I will say that that experience has not been what I see at most churches. Most churches are very quick to call out problems. Even if, the church that we're at now, my my pastor Josh, just using it as an example, just a couple Sundays ago. I don't remember what the exact context was, but I think he was talking about accountability, but he made the comment that um, if the associate pastor was stepping out on his wife or something like that, that he would expect that the associate pastor is not going to be surprised if Pastor Josh calls
Mhm.
him out on that. If he finds out and he says, "Hey, this is not okay. It needs to stop, and it needs to stop now, and we're going to deal with this now." And that's how it should be. We should be the first people that are calling out the issues that are going on in our church. And I think the fact that we're not makes it makes the church lose a lot of credibility. I think it makes a lot of
Mhm.
people not want to have anything to do with the church, and possibly causes a lot of people to step away from their faith. Um, I've seen, kind of circling back to the main question, I have seen some of the nicest, best people I have ever known have been in church, and some of the meanest and probably worst people I have ever known have been in church. Um, you have both because the church is full of people that are hurt, that are broken, that are flawed, that are sinners, and they need Jesus just like everybody else. The only difference is that they are in a place where they are surrounded by, hopefully, surrounded by people that can help them see the issues that they have going on. Um, I wasn't expecting to go down that route when I started answering that question. um, you got anything else, Aubrey, you want to throw in on that?
Yeah. No, I mean, I definitely agree. I opposed doing any type of ministry my whole life. I was very, very against it. People used to ask me all the time because my dad's a pastor, my grandpa was a pastor, all my uncles are pastors, my brother's an evangelist, and was like, "Are you going into ministry? Are you going into ministry like all your family?" And always, always, always was no. I would never go into ministry. And I never had plans to leave the church or not be a Christian. It was always, I just, as a pastor's kid, I saw, um, first off, what it looked like to leave a church and how people treated you um, when you decided to get up and move to where God was calling you next, and how they didn't like it and how they treated you because of it. I saw behind the scenes of church issues and church problems, and I used to always say growing up, I used to always say church people are the worst people, which is definitely not how it should be. But that is something that was so common to me. Um, and which is why I never wanted to have anything to do with ministry, because I was like, I don't want to have to deal with that. Like, that is the last thing that I want to do. Until obviously the Lord told me differently. But it's like, obviously, but um, no, it's not. Like, that's a problem that church people are known as the worst people. Like, I mean, there's the statistic like on Sundays, like waitresses hate to work on Sundays because they say that the church crowd is always the worst tippers. They're the rudest people, and that's definitely not how it should be. Church people should be the nicest people and have the character of Jesus. Church people should be the biggest tippers because we're givers, and that's what our nature and our characteristics should be because Jesus was a giver. Um, so no, I mean all of the stereotypes of the church, honestly, most of them are true, but you can't characterize that into one whole body because like I said earlier, not true Christians aren't like that. They're not going to act like that. They're going to have the nature of Jesus and carry that. But it is a sad thing that a lot of church people are the meanest people.
Okay, next question. Christian ministers and missionaries are more spiritual than other believers. Um, I'll jump in on this one. I don't think this is probably one we're going to take a ton of time answering because I think it's a pretty quick answer, and I don't feel like it needs a ton more backing up. But no, they're not. Um, I think this is a problem too with just and this kind of goes hand in hand with the whole calling out our own crowd. Um, so one of the shows I watch, Remnant Radio, they have a saying: they like to stand in the middle of the road and get hit by traffic on both sides. Um, but as someone who grew up in the Pentecostal charismatic movement, I do want to make sure that things that are going on there are addressed. If I have to address them, then I will with whatever platform I have. Now, I think that this is something that is a problem in the Pentecostal charismatic church. I'm 100% confident Aubrey's going to agree with me, but I do think, and I know that Tiffany and Jess would agree with me as well. But I think that there is this thought that has permeated the minds of a lot of people that are in charismatic churches or Pentecostal churches, and they almost a certain gifts, like especially tongues, like it's set at this higher elevation that the person that speaks in tongues out loud in service, like, man, like they are close to God. Like they are really, really close to God, or they are so spiritual, or which that I am planning on us doing a whole nother episode talking about this specifically. Um, but just real quick to graze over it, that is, if you're really going to look at one specific gift, there's only one gift that is singled out over the other gifts, and that is prophecy. And it's singled out over the other gifts a couple times. Now, that still doesn't mean that people that have the gift of prophecy, or that prophesy on a regular basis, are any more spiritual than anybody else. The entire body the entire body needs the entire body. Pastors and evangelists, yes, they have a job, and yes, um, they may have a full-time job where it is actually their paid job is to study the Bible and to learn the Bible and to talk to people about it. But it's not your pastor's responsibility to go out and bring people to the church. It's your pastor's responsibility to shepherd the flock that is at the church. It's the congregant's responsibility to bring people in. And just because one person's gift is different, or maybe is more of a on display type of gift, and not even necessarily talking about spiritual gifts, but just gifts in general, or personalities, or however you want to look at it. But looking at the whole idea of like a pastor or an evangelist or something like that, just because their gift is in more of a public setting, or a in front of people's vision setting, like it's something that people see, does not mean that they're more spiritual. It doesn't mean that they're closer to God. It doesn't mean that they have a better relationship with God. I'll be honest, one of the she was a kind of a spiritual mother for me. And she used to go at the church where my dad's a pastor now. She ended up passing away several years ago of cancer, but she was probably one of, as far as just on a pure level relationship with God, she is one that I strive to have that level of relationship with God. And she wasn't a pastor, she wasn't an evangelist. She was a mom and a grandma. She didn't work outside the house. That's all she did. Was she was a mom, she was a grandma, and she loved Jesus. And her just, I mean, her confidence in Jesus, her relationship with Jesus, was just like crazy to me. Especially seeing when she was actually going through the cancer and the treatments and things like that. Um, just her confidence in spite of everything that was going on, that God was still in control. God still had a plan. She didn't know what was going to happen, but that didn't matter because God did, and He was going to take care of her no matter what. Um, and just, that is, and that's something I see very frequently. Usually, some of the most grounded in the word people never step on a platform. They never get up and speak publicly to people. But if you can get them one on one and have a conversation with them, the the level of confidence they have in God, the level of knowledge they have in the Word will absolutely blow your mind, um, completely. So if you're listening and you have somebody at your church that's um, uh, maybe an older individual, and they are typically just sitting there, but they always have their Bible with them, and they're always being very intent on what is being preached. Their Bible looks a little worse for the wear, tattered, very broken down. I would encourage you to have a conversation with them, find out what they want to do, grab a coffee, pay for the coffee, and just sit and talk with them. Because I would be willing to bet money that you are going to go away from that conversation um, much better off than you went into it. Um, so if you have opportunity to do that, I highly recommend it. Those people are usually the ones that are really going to help you grow spiritually.
Yeah, I think I definitely don't agree with the statement that pastors or evangelists or prophets, apostles, teachers, whatever, are more spiritual than others in the body. If we were all pastors or evangelists, the world would not work. It could not function. So God places different gifts within us um, for that reason, because He has us called to different places. Our biggest calling in life is to love Jesus and then to love others. It's the first, second greatest commandment. You're, and then He has your assignment of what you have to do. But as long as you're fulfilling your calling of loving Him and then from that place loving others, like that is success in life. And I can't remember. I believe Pastor Michael Kulanos said this. I don't know if it was his vision or if he was talking about someone else's, but he was talking about this vision or dream or whatever they had of he saw like the throne room of heaven, and that there was this guy um, sitting close, and it was a homeless guy he had met earlier, um, sitting. And this, I might be getting the story way wrong, but it's something of this nature. He was sitting like in closer proximity to the throne of God than like this other pastor or evangelist was. And the Lord was saying that like his like it doesn't matter necessarily what he's doing with his life, of what his uh career is and what that actually looks like. He's doing what I called him to do. And now he's sitting because of his love for me, he is closer proximity to my throne. And so it does not definitely make you more spiritual to be a pastor or evangelist or whatever, although that's all wonderful things. And if the Lord is calling you to that, that's amazing. But some of the most spiritual people, like you were saying, were like just a mom or a grandma, um, or a teacher, or whatever. And like, honestly, so like when uh, I'm going to talk about her because she's not on here. When I met Jess, I met Jess, and 4 days later, we drove 7 hours together to the Asbury Revival. Crazy story. It doesn't make sense, but the Lord used it. Amen. And so, but when I met her, all I knew was that she had got saved like maybe 2 years ago. But when I began talking to her, I began to realize that her depth in the Lord was far greater than so many people that I know, and like several people. And her knowledge of the word was far greater than so many people that I know, and people that have been raised up in church and that had relationship with the Lord. But it's because of that hunger and that love for Jesus that like provoked her to seek after more. That like that is what necessarily, I guess you could say, distinguished her from others. It wasn't because she was in a pastoral position or evangelistic position, if she happened to be. It's because of that hunger for the Lord and that love that she had that distinguished her. So like, yeah, that's what's going to distinguish you for sure. It's not a position or a label or a title. All of that, none of those things should matter. When I left a ministry to come down and work at a retail store, it makes no sense. And I'll be honest, it makes no logical sense. Now, at the same time, I'm serving my brother's ministry who does missions and whatnot. However, like my like full-time job is at a retail store. And I left a ministry to come do this because I just know the Lord told me to do it. And I know the Lord said, it doesn't matter like what you're doing or where you're at, as long as you're where I called you to be. That's what matters. And you need to be satisfied, not with a position or a title or that, but you just need to be satisfied with me. And that's like, I had to come to the satisfaction of, if it's just me and Jesus all day long and I'm a janitor, that is 100% okay with me.
Yeah, while you're saying that, I went ahead. I just text Jess and I'm like, "Hey, just so you know, you've come up like 12 times tonight." And I'm not going to give her any context. And so that way she's just going to have to sit and wonder what we said about her all night until this comes out. And like, I don't know, probably be like 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. But, okay. Um, Next one. Aubrey, I'll let you jump on this one first. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've got 4 left. Okay, yeah, 4 left. I think they're all going to be pretty easy, pretty quick to answer. And then we can save the other ones for another time, maybe when everyone else can be on too. My watch is going crazy. Is that? Oh yeah. it's okay. Um, Next question. Christians should never say anything that might offend someone or hurt someone else's feelings. Aubrey, should Christians say things that might offend somebody or hurt their feelings?
Yeah, yeah, they should, because the the gospel is offensive in general. Um, so the gospel offends people. I witnessed that firsthand when I was in Milwaukee this past weekend on the streets evangelizing. People are offended by the gospel. They do not even want to hear the name of Jesus. So are you going to say things that offend people? 100%. Also, if like a brother or sister in Christ is in sin, you need to correct them and tell them that they are in the wrong, that they are living in sin and they need to repent. And is that going to be offensive to them? Oh, 100% it's going to be offensive. Um, but they need to hear it. And that is you in love correcting them. That is what love looks like, is to correct them and say, hey, you're going down the wrong path that's going to lead you possibly to hell. And I don't want that to happen. Um, I, I was with, at this evangelism conference this weekend, and one of the guys that was teaching there, he made the statement. Someone said something to him, was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and he was like, "Bro, I'm Christian. I don't get offended," because like, which is the truth. Like, we shouldn't get offended. I know it's so easy. I mean, John Bevere writes the book Debate of Satan, and how like that's literally what Satan will use to trap you in sin, because offense produces so much bad fruit. It produces bitterness, it produces jealousy, it produces greed in your heart that like can amount to just so much more, and it can produce uh, just a lot of hatred within you, and it can lead to so much sin and corruptness in your life. And so offense is very, very dangerous. But the thing with offense is though, like it doesn't just happen. Like you have to choose to pick it up and receive the offense. You can choose to like just be like, no, like whatever, it's fine, like and move past it, or you choose to pick it up, dwell on it, and then that's when the bitterness, jealousy, or greed or whatever grows in your heart, and it amounts to a lot more. Um, so yeah, you're gonna say things that offend people. It's There's a difference though in you saying it in love, um, because like you can say the truth, but if it's not in love, it's not the truth. Because the gospel is love, the gospel is truth. Um, so yeah, what you
No, I'd agree. Obviously, actually, I just shared. So I was going through uh, my camera roll this last week, and I realized there's something I screenshotted. I was going to post on the basically biblical page, and I completely forgot to do it, and so I just went ahead and did it. And it actually lines up perfectly with what you were just saying. Uh, so here I'm going to share it real quick. Are you seeing that, Aubrey?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is a post I saw a screenshot. It said, "When you died, God isn't going to ask you about someone else. He won't ask you about the two men down the street who got married. He won't ask you about the girl who had an abortion. He won't ask you about the atheist that lives on the corner. He won't ask you about the woman who feels more comfortable as a man. He will ask you how you love those people as he called you to do. And some of you didn't." So I commented, and I have to say this all because actually majority of our listeners are on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. But so I commented, or I shared it with the caption, "While I do agree with a broad point being made in this post, I think it's conflating love and comfort. You're correct that you won't be judged for other people's actions or sins, and that you will be judged for how you loved others. But what does that love look like? As Christians, if we really believe that unbelievers are headed to eternal pain, suffering, and damnation, then we should be spreading that information. But even more than that, we should be spreading the news that they don't have to go through that. And the cost to get out of it has already been paid. So I do agree that we won't be judged for how others act, but we will be judged for how much we loved others by sharing Jesus and the gospel message with them." Now, that's, again, this kind of goes back to why I think we said it in one of the last ones we did for Truth Month. But the gospel is offensive in nature. It is not to make you feel good about yourself and to um, tell you how good of a person you are. Or, we were even talking before we started recording tonight about you going there, and you guys would ask people, "Do you believe in afterlife? And if so, where are you going to go?" And they would say, "Yeah, I'm going to go to heaven." And the reason is, "I'm a good person." Well, no, like you're not. Like just plain and simple. No matter how good you think you are, you're not, because there's been one good person to ever walk this earth. Um, nobody else is good. Everyone else is bad. And this is where it becomes an issue of it's it's very easy for us to see some sin as not as big a deal as other sin. And a big part of that is because we live in a world where sin is just prevalent. It's there everywhere. Um, and I will say that there are some sins that don't have as big an impact as other sins. If I steal a piece of bubble gum, it's not going to impact me or anyone else around me as much as if I were to murder somebody. Now, those are both sins. Those are both evil and wicked. One of those is obviously going to have a much bigger ramification here on earth than the other one would. But the whole idea is, I keep kicking my mic. The whole idea is that God is perfect, completely perfect, spotless, without blemish. And it's not that he doesn't like to be around sin. It's that in his perfection, it is impossible for sin to exist where he is. Think of like light. It is impossible if you are unless there is something that is causing the darkness to be there, the shadow to be there, it is impossible for darkness to exist next to light. And the reason why is not because that's not a contradictory statement. It's just because you understand that darkness is just the absence of light. The same thing that sin is the absence of God. It's not putting a limitation on God. It's saying that it can't exist where God is, because sin is much like darkness is a word that we just use to describe the absence of light. Sin is a word that we use to describe the absence of God. So it cannot be together in that way. And and so just the idea that it's very easy for us to look at sin on a different level when God doesn't do that. And like we said before, we've said a couple times even tonight that just the very nature of the gospel is offensive. But if we believe that all this is true, and we believe that there is a hell, there's a heaven, and you're going to be in one of them for eternity, we would be genuinely terrible people to not do that. And I think there are some, I don't remember his name off the top of my head. There's an atheist on YouTube that he actually does watch one of the Christian YouTube channels that I follow frequently. And he's actually made a comment that he doesn't mind when Christians try to talk to him about that. And his reasoning is because of what I just said. He knows that they believe, even though he doesn't believe it, he knows that they believe that he's going to go to hell for eternity. And so he would expect that if they believe that, they're going to try to help him not go there. Now, again, he doesn't believe it, but he doesn't get upset by them telling him that he's in sin. He doesn't get offended by them saying that, you're wrong, you're going to go to hell. Like he understands that with what they believe, this should be expected, and this is loving. I'm glad when you were talking about this too, you threw out John Bevere, and I'm glad you did. In that, I don't know if it's in the original Beta Satan or if it's just the re-released version, but he actually makes a comment about you can't offend a dead person. And he talks about, we're supposed to die to our flesh daily, and we're supposed to die to ourselves, present our bodies a living sacrifice. And so that whole idea, if you're dying to yourself, you can't be offended because you're dead. Now, obviously not physically dead, but the whole idea there, you can't offend me if my priority is not me. Yeah. Anything else, Aubrey, before we move on to the next one? Alrighty. as a Christian, you should not associate with unbelievers. Um, no, I don't think this is true. Now, I will say there is something about being unequally yoked, and I think that yes, it applies to marriage, but I think it also applies to a lot of other situations too. If you were to get into a business with someone who is not a Christian, then there may be circumstances that pop up where you're going to have to make a decision that maybe doesn't seem like it's the best decision for the company, but as a Christian, it's the decision that you have to make, and that's going to cause conflict because the person you're in the company with is not a Christian, so they don't hold those values. Um, there is some aspect of that, but as far as just not associating with unbelievers, no. And I mean, we see that throughout Jesus's entire ministry that we're able to witness. He goes to the people that are not not believers. I mean, his ministry was to the Jewish people, and so he was working with them, trying to convince them, be a witness to them. But then he tells the disciples to go to the Gentiles who were even further from the truth than the Jewish people were. Um, and they're told to go do that, and then we had the instruction that we're to go into all the world and make disciples. And so you you have to, it's not possible to go, I mean, technically, we'll say technically, yes, it would be possible to go through your life without ever having to come in contact with a non-believer. It would be very difficult, but it would be possible. But that's completely defeats the purpose of what we're supposed to be doing as Christians. We're supposed to be reaching out to people. We're supposed to be building relationships and bringing people into the church and bringing people into relationship with Jesus. And so the idea that we're not supposed to associate with Christian or with non-believers is faulty thinking. Aubrey.
When I think about like Christian friendships, I like to like how I base my life is kind of or well really is just around how Jesus based his relationships and his friendships. He had so he had his 12 disciples, but then he also had his inner three. And so in the same manner, like I have like my inner circle, my close circle that like I'm going to share my dreams with, that I'm going to spend a majority of my time with, that those are going to be like those friendships that are like I would say like I hold to a higher standard than maybe other friendships. But they're going to love Jesus intimately. They're going to be spending time with Jesus. They're going to be building me up in that. Um, and then I'm going to have maybe my more of an outer circle, which was his other 9 disciples, who they love him, but they don't love him to the extent that the inner three did. So my like more outer circle, honestly, it's not that maybe they don't love Jesus the way that maybe the my inner circle does. It's more so I'm just not as close to them per se. Like, but they love Jesus, and I still have that friendship, and I cultivate that relationship with them. But that closeness of the friendship is not to the extent that the inner circle is. Like, I'm not necessarily probably going to share my dreams with them and spend a majority of my time with them. Although maybe I'll spend a little bit of my time with them, but then you have like your outer circle, I guess you could call it, which is all of the unbelievers. And although there's nothing wrong with having relationships with those people, it's not going to be people that you're going to spend a majority of your time with. Um, I'm sure everyone's heard the phrase, "Show me your friends, I'll show you your future." It's very, very true. I saw it in my own life how I hung out with someone who loved Jesus, but like their character didn't really align with the word, um, and the way they talked didn't really align with the word. And I like had no idea. Like, I love Jesus, but I had no idea how that was diminishing my character, how that was diminishing my relationship with the Lord, until after we weren't really friends and I saw the decline in my relationship with God since I became friends with them. Um, and then when I went to ministry school, I saw what community really looked like. And I honestly, like, I would say a portion of the way that the Lord really transformed my life at ministry school had to do with the community that I was around, because I was around these friendships, and I would leave being like, man, I want to love Jesus more. They provoked me to go after the Lord more. They provoked me to seek more. I left and was so like fulfilled. And I mean, even when I moved back home after that, I tried to hang out with like the same friends that I hung out with before I left, and they love Jesus, they really do, but like I would leave feeling like so unfulfilled, so honestly kind of dirty. Like they weren't like necessarily, they weren't bad people, they weren't doing sinful things per se. They just didn't make me want to love the Lord more, if I'm being honest. Um and you have to find those people that like, honestly, you need to be friends with people who love the Lord more than you do, or who maybe love him and see him in a different way than maybe you do. Like maybe I have more of a revelation of Jesus as like my father, but that my friend has more of a revelation of Jesus as her comforter or her provider, and I want to get to know him like that, and like we feed off of each other and grow more together because of that. um for instance, when, I mean, we'll talk about Jess again. When I met Jess, when I met Jess, I like I s- I honest so I met Jess probably 9 months after I moved back home, from ministry school. And for those 9 months, the only people that I had that really made me want to love the Lord more was, well, my family and then Tiffany and Jesse. Those were the only people that I was like, man, they make me just want to love Jesus more. And then I met Jess, and when I met Jess, you know, she's my age, and we hung out with each other a lot. I saw my relationship with the Lord strengthen, and began to go deeper and deeper because she convicted me. She convicted me to the point where I was like, man, like I see what she has, and she's been saved for only 2 years. I've spent my whole life in church. I have this history with the Lord. Why am I not so much farther along? Um, than I am? Why am I not deeper than what I am? I need to seek after more. Like that's so convicting, and it provoked me to love the Lord more than I had. So those friendships are so essential in your relationship with the Lord. You need a community of believers that are going to make you want to love the Lord more. And it's not associating with other unbelievers. It's more so like, if we didn't associate with unbelievers, how are we going to ever share the gospel? Because associating is not friendship per se. No, I don't think there's anything wrong with a friendship with an unbeliever. I think it depends on the depth of that friendship. I don't think you should spend a majority of your time with that person, because it will affect you, whether you see it or not. In the moment, it does affect you.
I think that's a good point to throw out there too. The people that you are the closest with should be believers. Um, you know, I've I've got people that I'm friends with. There's actually there's one for sure. The other one I can't say that I talk to on a daily basis, but there's one individual that I talk to on, I mean, pretty much a daily basis. And it's just somebody that I worked with previously. We have a lot of similar interests as far as like movies and games and music. I mean, just like random stuff like that. Um, but I take opportunity when I can, when I feel the Holy Spirit leading me to, and I bring up what I believe on different topics. Um, they their stance on a lot of stuff is very different than where I'm at. They're not a believer, um, but I'm not opposed to talking to them. I'm not even opposed to um, doing stuff, hanging out. Like they've even talked about once, um, when we maybe go back out to visit family and stuff like that, actually taking a lunch together to catch back up and stuff like that. And he, like I said, he's not a believer, but I also know that there's only so deep that relationship can go, because it really can't get past much that is surface level. Because for me, anything that is below surface level is God. It has to be rooted there. Um, and so he doesn't have those roots there, and so anything below surface level ends up just being a I don't know how to say it. I don't want to say argument because that's not right, and I don't feel like debate's the right word either. But I mean, basically, it's a conflict of what I hold deep and valuable versus what he holds deep and valuable. Um, and not saying that it ends up being like an argument or anything like that, but it's just it doesn't really work. Um, so, but that's not saying I pray for him frequently, and I'm going to continue to pour into him as much as I can in hopes that he will one day see that uh, see the truth. But I wouldn't have that opportunity if I didn't allow for a friendship to be there. And also, he's going to take a lot more from me telling him as a friend than he would from any Joe Schmo that he may see on the street or someone online saying something to him or whatever. But okay, we will go on. We've got 2 left. We're on hour and 20 minutes right now. We'll hit these last 2 and wrap it up here in probably the next 10 minutes or so. Christians should not enjoy any earthly pleasures. We'll skip this one because I feel like we kind of already answered it with the not having fun and things like that. I don't think that that's the case. Christians can enjoy earthly pleasures. There's a lot of earthly pleasures that we feel like God gave us for a reason. He gave us for a purpose and actually enjoying it and having fun and things like that. But there's also confines and rules for how those are to happen. Last question. Christians always feel close to God. No, it's not true. And this is part of the Christian walk too, is there's a lot of times, and I'll say too, especially when you're going through difficult situations, there can be and usually are a lot of times where you don't feel close to God. Now, that doesn't mean that God's not close to you, because we know, according to Scripture, that that's not the case. But I take those more as an opportunity to push in and show that even though I may not be feeling it in the moment, I'm not going to let my emotions dictate my actions. That is something that our 1.5-year-old does. She allows her emotions to dictate her actions. Even if you're looking outside of Christianity, just as an adult, that's something that you should have a better handle on, as far as don't just do whatever you want to do because that's just how you feel. There are disciplines and things like that go along with it. But being able to, there's been times where I've been in church and I don't feel like worshiping. I don't feel like participating. And I have to force myself to do it. And there's times where I don't feel like reading my Bible. I don't feel like praying. I don't feel like, doing whatever. And I have to force myself to do it, even though I don't want to. And typically what I find is in those moments, when I have to force myself to, and sometimes it could be for even more than just a day. It could be for a couple days in a row or a week or maybe even longer. But when I get to the point where I finally push completely through that, and I finally get to the point of not being in that, I guess, rut anymore, there's typically really, really good on the other side of it. There's a purpose in pushing through it. But no, I just being a Christian doesn't mean that you always feel close to God.
Yeah, I think a lot of times Christians will try to refer uh, to maybe times that they don't feel the Lord per se as like a dry spell. Um, Personally, you might disagree with me on this. I don't necessarily agree that we have to go through dry spells or like that's something that should be a thing at all. Because we have like a river of living water within us. Why would we be dry? Honestly, personally, I believe that I think in those times, the Lord is trying to reveal himself in a different way to you that you've never necessarily encountered. And I think I think that it just requires you to search and it requires you to seek. And because he responds to the seeking, he responds to desperation. And so when we get to that point of seeking desperation, he always responds to hunger. So I personally, I don't necessarily think that the Lord is going to put you in a dry spell and just not going to be there. Like the Lord is always there. Obviously, there's difference in measures of His presence. So like He can come like in a greater measure than maybe in another time. Are you okay? I'm just making sure. Um, Sorry, my train of thought now. But I definitely do believe that as a Christian, you're not always going to feel close to God. Um, because you're human and you're flawed, and sometimes like maybe that unforgiveness in your heart is going to keep you from the Lord, or sometimes like you're really just not going to feel like it. Like you're going to be tired, and you're going to be like, Lord, like I just really don't want to right now. Um, but when you remember what Christ did for you and you remember um, the love that He has for you, it's gonna make you want to do it, I guess, in a sense, or you're gonna make yourself do it because you know that when you do it, you're never gonna regret it. Also, I was talking to a girl I went on this trip with this past weekend, and her relationship with the Lord is absolutely incredible, and she has this deep friendship with Him that is unlike anything I've ever seen. But I was talking to her about like practically like what does that secret place time look like, and she was like, like if I don't feel it, if I don't feel like it, what I do is I turn on worship music or something that's going to provoke the Lord to come. I'm going to pray and she's like my goal is not necessarily for the Lord to provoke me. She goes, although that's wonderful and I want him to, but my goal is to provoke the Lord and to minister to his heart. Um, and I think when we do that, he comes in greater measure and it's going to give us the desire to. Honestly, a lot of times when I really don't feel like it, I'm like, Lord, like, please give me the desire, like, to be hungry right now because I'm just not. Please give me a desire to be here right now because I'm just not. And I think that's something that we really often, I don't know. I think it's something that's so practical that we just kind of forget that, oh, we can ask him for the desire to do this. And it's so practical that we just don't do it. But like he will give it to you if you just ask.
We see some, similarities with that in the Old Testament when is it Elijah is asked to prophesy, and before he does, he has them bring someone to play music on the harp, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
And obviously not exactly the same, but it's still the same concept of kind of setting the mood. Now, I will say that I think, and this goes into a whole nother issue with the, like we've talked about before, with the charismatic Pentecostal stuff. I do think there can be too much emotionalism in it, but I also think that God gave us our emotions for a reason. And so I think that there is a line there. And so I do think that, if just having an emotional reaction to something doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong or right. I think that we should use our emotions, and I think that can be too. There's part of that that goes with it, like as far as just not feeling like worshiping right now, or not feeling like praying right now, or whatever. A lot of that is an emotional thing, and so kind of getting your mind ready for that. Just getting yourself set up mentally to kind of have an encounter, to it's definitely, I think that's one of the biggest reasons that we have music worship in a corporate setting, is because you're setting yourself up to receive what God's going to say through the minister. Yeah, no, I don't think I necessarily disagree with what you were saying. I think I think I could agree with at least what I heard. I think I agree with most of it.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, like the Lord's, this is, we're kind of getting off on a tangent, but I think it's interesting, the Lord's preferences, how he actually does have preferences. Pastor Michael Kilianos, he always says, he goes, like, I don't know why the Lord likes this song, but he always comes on this song, so we're gonna do it because he likes it. I don't know why, but he does. Or like, he likes the strings, like the harp and stuff, and the violin. Like, I don't know why he likes it, but he does, so we're gonna do it because he always comes.
Yeah,
And like in the same way, like when I go into my secret place with the Lord, I'm like, Lord, like, show me your preferences because I want to do what you like, and I want to do, like, because when he likes it, he comes. And I don't, no, I can't really speak to why, like, those things are so, like, he has preferences for those things, but like, I think it's very interesting that the Lord does have preferences. Because, I mean, because he is a person, and a lot of times we don't treat him like a person, but like, just like any of us, we have things that we like, and we have preferences to certain things. I'm
yeah,
not saying that, like, if we sing a song he doesn't like, he's not going to come per se.
right,
But
right.
like, like, there are certain, when I was at Jesus Image, there were certain songs that would pull on the presence in a way that was different than another song. And we can't really explain it other than that's what the Lord liked, and every single time it happened.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I can see that. Um, hmm. I don't know. I hadn't really thought about that a whole lot, but I mean, it makes sense. Um, we'll have to, maybe that's going to be a topic that we can dig into later on. Uh, Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed that video. We release new content every week, twice a week, once on Tuesday and once on Thursday. So don't forget to like and subscribe so you will always see the newest content we have coming out. If you want to, you can check out a playlist that's down here, and it'll take you into another video of ours that we think you're probably going to enjoy. Thanks. God bless.